Galactic soldiers laughed as the dragon's hatchling cried, until a human boy stepped between them. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the bustling spaceport of Colony 7, where the boundaries between species blurred and the rule of the Galactic Concordat remained absolute, a small figure moved against the current of the crowd, drawn by sounds that others chose to ignore. Miles Harper was just 11 Earth years old, his small frame lost amid the towering aliens and busy colonists that filled the port's central plaza. Relocated to Colony 7 with his parents after the terraforming disaster on Proxima Centauri b, Miles had developed a keen sense for trouble and an even keener sense of justice, qualities that would soon be put to the ultimate test. The commotion came from the far corner of the plaza, where a group of Concordat soldiers, tall, armored, and intimidating in their blue-silver uniforms, had formed a loose circle around something small. Their laughter echoed across the plaza, a cruel sound that sent most passers-by hurrying in the opposite direction. But not Miles. "What do you think it's worth?" one soldier asked, prodding the object of their attention with his gravity baton. "Alive or dead?" "Dead," another answered, his scaled face showing what passed for a grin among the Seraphim race. A live hatchling would be trouble, especially a Dracari hatchling. Miles pushed through the crowd, his heart hammering against his ribs. The Dracari were legendary throughout the galaxy, a reclusive, powerful species that rarely ventured beyond their home system. Most humans had never seen one, but everyone had heard the stories. Massive, sentient creatures with scales that could deflect energy weapons, telepathic abilities that could drive lesser beings mad, and a cultural memory that stretched back millions of years. Some called them dragons, borrowing from Earth mythology, though the Dracari themselves found the comparison insulting. When Miles finally reached the edge of the circle, he saw what had attracted the soldiers' attention. It was indeed a Dracari hatchling, no larger than a house cat, its iridescent scales shimmering between deep blue and purple under the harsh artificial light. One of its delicate wings was bent at an unnatural angle, and its large, multifaceted eyes reflected pure terror. The creature was making a high-pitched keening sound that Miles felt more than heard, a telepathic cry that bypassed his ears and went straight to his mind. "Help!" The thought came, fragile and desperate. "Please." The nearest soldier raised his boot, preparing to stomp on the helpless creature. The other soldiers laughed, their voices blending into a single, merciless sound. Miles didn't think. He just moved. "Stop!" he shouted, his small body sliding between the soldier's boot and the injured hatchling. "Leave it alone." The circle of soldiers fell silent, their amusement transforming into disbelief, then anger. "Get out of the way, human child," the first soldier growled, his translator rendering his native Seraphim language into accented English. "This is Concordat business." Miles stood his ground, his hands trembling but his voice steady. "No, it's not. It's bullying. And it's wrong." "Wrong." The soldier laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What would a human whelp know about right and wrong? Your species is barely out of its own gravity well. The Dracari are galactic vermin, boy. Dangerous vermin. Now move, or I'll move you." Behind Miles, the hatchling had stopped its telepathic crying. He could feel its presence in his mind. Curious, hopeful, still terrified. "I'm not moving," Miles said, spreading his arms as if his small frame could somehow shield the creature. "And they're not vermin. They're sentient beings, just like us." The soldier who had been about to crush the hatchling bent down, bringing his scaled face level with Miles's. "You have 5 seconds to step aside, human." 5, 4. Miles swallowed hard, but didn't budge. 3, 2. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" A new voice cut through the tension. A tall woman in the dark green uniform of the Colonial Authority pushed her way into the circle. Captain Lauren Bennett had been the security chief of Colony 7 for 3 years, and she wore her authority like armor. Her sharp eyes took in the scene in an instant. The circle of Concordat soldiers, the human boy, and the injured Dracari hatchling. "Captain Bennett," The lead soldier straightened, his demeanor shifting. No problem. Just dealing with a pest. Really? Bennett's gaze flicked from the soldier to Miles, then to the hatchling. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like 6 armed soldiers surrounding an unarmed child and an injured animal. That's not pest control. That's something else entirely. The Drakari are classified as dangerous under Concordat law. The soldier persisted. This one is separated from its brood mother. Protocol dictates. I know the protocol, Bennett interrupted. I also know that Colony 7 falls under joint colonial Concordat jurisdiction, which means my authority is equal to yours here. And I'm exercising that authority now. She turned to Miles. Son, is that creature hurt? Miles nodded, not trusting his voice. Then it falls under our wildlife protection statutes. She tapped her wrist communicator. Dr. Walker? This is Bennett. I need you at the Central Plaza. We have an injured xenofauna specimen. Drakari. Yes, you heard me right. The soldier took a step forward. Captain, I must insist. Insist all you want, soldier, Bennett cut him off. But unless you want a diplomatic incident on your hands, one that would require me to contact both your superiors and the Drakari conclave, I suggest you and your friends move along. Now, for a moment, it seemed the soldier might challenge her. Then, with a gesture to his companions, he stepped back. This isn't over, Captain. The Concordat doesn't forget. Neither do the Drakari, Bennett replied evenly. Something to consider. As the soldiers marched away, their armor gleaming under the artificial sunlight, Bennett knelt beside Miles and the hatchling. That was brave, kid, she said, her voice softening. Also incredibly stupid. Do you have any idea what those soldiers could have done to you? Miles nodded. But they were going to kill it. Bennett sighed. Yeah, they were. She studied the hatchling, which was now watching them both with wary intelligence. My name's Captain Lauren Bennett. What's yours? Miles Harper, ma'am. Well, Miles Harper, you've just made things very complicated for both of us. She reached out a hand, hovering it near the hatchling without touching. The Drakari don't leave their home system without good reason, and they never, ever leave their young unattended. As if in response to her words, the hatchling's telepathic voice touched their minds again, stronger this time, more focused. Mother, coming. Danger. Hi. Bennett's expression changed from concern to alarm. That's not good. She tapped her communicator again. Dr. Walker, change of plans. Meet us at my office. And bring your full xenobiology kit. We may have a situation. She carefully picked up the hatchling, which curled into her hands without resistance. Come on, Miles. Your parents are Nathan and Emily Harper, right? The new terraforming consultants. Miles nodded, surprised. How did you know? It's my job to know everyone on this colony. She started walking rapidly, gesturing for him to follow. And they're going to need to know what their son just got involved in. Miles hurried after her, a sense of both dread and excitement building in his chest. What did I get involved in? Bennett's expression was grim. If we're lucky, just an interstellar incident. If we're not, she glanced down at the hatchling. Well, let's just say there's a reason the Concordat and everyone else in the galaxy gives the Drakari a wide berth. The Colonial Authority building stood at the heart of the human section of Colony 7. Its architecture a blend of practical frontier design and Earth nostalgia. Captain Bennett led Miles through security checkpoints, where guards cast curious and increasingly alarmed glances at the bundle in her arms. Dr. Caleb Walker was waiting for them in Bennett's office, a tall, lanky man with perpetually disheveled hair and eyes that lit up at the sight of the Drakari hatchling. Is that really? He began, then stopped himself, approaching slowly. Extraordinary. I've only seen pictures. The bioluminescent patterning along the wing membranes suggests northern hemisphere origin, possibly from the Kashtari Mountains. Save the scientific observations for later, Doc, Bennett said, carefully placing the hatchling on her desk. Can you help it? Walker nodded, opening his medical kit. The wing appears to be the only significant injury. Broken, but clean. Drakari have remarkable regenerative capabilities, but I can accelerate the process. He removed a small device from his kit and passed it slowly over the injured wing. It's remarkable that it's allowing me to treat it. Dracari are notoriously defensive around other species. It asked for help, Miles said quietly. In my head, Walker and Bennett exchanged glances. Telepathic contact with a non-Dracari, Walker murmured. That's unprecedented. My parents, Miles suddenly remembered. They'll be worried. Bennett nodded. I've already sent them a message. They're on their way. She studied Miles thoughtfully. In the meantime, perhaps you can tell us exactly what happened from the beginning. Miles recounted the events in the plaza, describing how he'd heard the hatchling's cry for help and intervened before the soldiers could harm it. As he spoke, the hatchling watched him with those multifaceted eyes, occasionally sending impressions, not quite words, but feelings of gratitude and growing trust. Dr. Walker finished treating the wing and stepped back. The break will heal within hours. Remarkable creatures. Their cellular regeneration rate is. A deep, resonant vibration cut him off, so low it was almost subsonic. The lights in the office flickered. A moment later, alarms began to sound throughout the building. Bennett's communicator buzzed. Captain, we have a situation, a panicked voice reported. There's I don't know how to describe it. A ship, I think. It just appeared in orbit. No approach vector, no warp signature. It's just there. Configuration? Bennett demanded, already moving toward the door. Unknown. It's not in any of our databases. But it's big, Captain. Really big. The hatchling stirred on the desk, its telepathic voice suddenly clear in all their minds. Mother. Dr. Walker paled. A Dracari capital ship? Here? That's impossible. They never leave their home system. Apparently, they make exceptions for their children, Bennett replied grimly. Miles, stay here with Dr. Walker and the hatchling. I need to get to the command center. Before she could leave, however, her communicator buzzed again. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's directed specifically to you. Bennett froze. Put it through. The office's display screen flickered to life, showing only darkness at first. Then, slowly, a massive form took shape, a creature that resembled the hatchling, but on an entirely different scale. Its scales shimmered with deep violets and blues, and its eyes held ancient intelligence. When it spoke, the voice bypassed the audio system entirely, reverberating directly in their minds. I am the Lara, brood mother of the Kashtari Highlands. You have something that belongs to me. Bennett straightened. I am Captain Lauren Bennett of the Earth Colonial Authority. We found your child injured and being threatened. We've provided medical attention. The massive eyes blinked slowly. Show me. Bennett gestured to the desk where the hatchling rested. The creature's gaze shifted, and a wave of emotion, relief, love, concern, washed over everyone in the room. My daughter lives. For this, I am grateful. The Dracari's mental voice hardened. But those who harmed her will answer for their actions. With respect, Bennett replied carefully. The individuals responsible were Concordat soldiers, not colonists. I make no distinction between your factions, the Lara responded. All who walk on two legs appear the same to us. But, she paused, her gaze shifting to Miles. Not all, perhaps. You, small one. You placed yourself between my daughter and harm. Miles swallowed, finding his voice with difficulty. Yes, I couldn't let them hurt her. A long silence followed, during which Miles felt as though the massive creature was examining not just his words, but his very thoughts. Interesting, the Lara finally responded. I will arrive to retrieve my daughter within your hour. Be prepared. The screen went dark. That went better than expected, Dr. Walker said, breaking the tense silence. At least she's not threatening to destroy the colony. Bennett didn't look reassured. Yet, Dracari are known for their particular sense of justice and their long memories. She turned to Miles. Your parents should be here any minute. When they arrive, I want you all to go home and stay there until this is resolved. Miles shook his head. I can't. I need to be here when the mother arrives. Absolutely not, Bennett said firmly. This is now a diplomatic situation involving a species we barely understand. It's no place for a child. But she spoke to me, Miles insisted. She noticed me. All the more reason to keep you away, Bennett countered. We don't know what she wants or how she'll react. The hatchling stirred again, sending a clear impression to Miles. Safety. Trust. Stay. She wants me here, Miles translated. The hatchling, I mean. She feels safe with me. Dr. Walker raised an eyebrow. The telepathic connection appears to be strengthening. Fascinating. Before Bennett could respond, the office door opened, and Miles's parents rushed in. Miles, his mother, Emily Harper, knelt and wrapped him in a tight embrace. Are you all right? We got Captain Bennett's message about some kind of incident. Nathan Harper stood behind his wife, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion as he noticed the small creature on the desk. Is that what I think it is? Mr. and Mrs. Harper, Bennett began. Your son intervened when a group of Concordat soldiers were threatening a Drakari hatchling. In doing so, he's become involved in a delicate situation. Drakari. Nathan's face paled. Here? That's not possible. It's very possible, Bennett replied. In fact, the mother is currently in orbit and will be landing to retrieve her child within the hour. Emily tightened her grip on Miles. We need to evacuate, then. Everyone knows what happens when the Drakari feel threatened. No one's evacuating, Bennett assured her. The brood mother expressed gratitude for the treatment of her child, and she seemed interested in Miles. Interested? Emily's voice rose. What does that mean? I'm not sure, Bennett admitted. But your son has established some kind of telepathic connection with the hatchling. Dr. Walker believes it may be unprecedented. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. So what happens now? Now, Bennett said, we prepare to meet with one of the most powerful and least understood species in the galaxy. And we hope that your son's intervention has earned us some goodwill. The alarms that had been blaring throughout the building suddenly ceased. Bennett's communicator buzzed again. Captain, the voice reported, we're tracking a shuttle launch from the Drakari vessel. Estimated arrival at the colony's central landing pad in 15 minutes. Understood. Have a security detail meet me there. Non-threatening posture, no weapons visible. She looked at the Harpers. I believe your son should be present for this meeting, but the decision is yours. Emily and Nathan exchanged worried glances. It's not dangerous, Miles said quietly. She won't hurt me. I can feel it. Emily looked skeptical. You can feel it? Miles, what's going on? The hatchling, Miles explained. She's been talking to me. In my head. And I think her mother wants to thank me. This is crazy, Nathan muttered. We're talking about the Drakari. They don't interact with humans. With anyone. They're interacting now, Bennett pointed out. And your son is at the center of it. This could be a historic opportunity for peaceful contact. After a moment of tense silence, Nathan nodded reluctantly. All right, but we're coming too. I wouldn't have it any other way, Bennett agreed. Dr. Walker, you'll join us as well. Bring whatever you need to ensure the hatchling remains stable. As they prepared to leave, Miles approached the desk where the hatchling rested. Its wing already looked better, the bones visibly realigning under the iridescent scales. It raised its head as he neared, and a clear feeling of anticipation flowed from its mind to his. We're going to meet your mother, Miles said softly. The hatchling made a sound that might have been a purr, its multifaceted eyes glittering with intelligence. The telepathic impression it sent was simple but powerful. Friend. The central landing pad was normally reserved for colonial authority ships and official Concordat vessels. Now, it stood empty, surrounded by a perimeter of nervous security officers. Captain Bennett positioned herself at the front, with Miles and his parents slightly behind her, and Dr. Walker holding the hatchling in a specially designed carrier. Remember, Bennett instructed everyone. Let me do the talking unless you're directly addressed. The Drakari value respect and straightforwardness. No sudden movements, no showing of teeth. They consider it aggressive. What about the Concordat? Nathan asked quietly. Won't they want to be involved in this? Bennett's expression darkened. I've informed them of the situation. They've been instructed to keep their distance. After what their soldiers did, that's for the best. A hushed silence fell over the landing pad as a dark shape appeared in the sky above. Unlike most shuttles, this craft made no sound as it descended, its hull shimmering with the same iridescent quality as the hatchling's scales. It was organic in design, more like a massive living creature than a constructed vessel. The ship settled onto the landing pad with impossible gentleness. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a section of the hull simply dissolved, creating an opening. The Lara emerged, and everyone except Miles took an involuntary step back. In person, the Drakari brood mother was even more imposing than she had appeared on the screen. Standing over 12 feet tall on her hind legs, her massive wings folded against her back, she moved with a grace that belied her size. Her scales caught the light of Colony 7's artificial sun, creating ripples of color that seemed almost hypnotic. But it was her eyes that held Miles transfixed, enormous, multifaceted orbs that reflected both ancient wisdom and fierce protectiveness. Captain Bennett stepped forward and bowed formally. Brood Mother Thalara, I am Captain Lauren Bennett. Welcome to Colony 7. Thalara's gaze swept over the assembled humans, lingering longest on Miles. When she spoke, her telepathic voice resonated in all their minds. I have not set foot on a world not our own in 700 of your years. Her head tilted slightly. I did not expect to do so again in my lifetime. Yet here I am, because of the actions of 6 warriors and 1 child. Dr. Walker stepped forward, holding out the carrier with the hatchling. The small creature chirped audibly, a sound of joy and recognition. Your daughter's wing has been treated, Walker explained, opening the carrier. The break was clean, and her natural regenerative abilities should complete the healing process within hours. The hatchling leapt from the carrier and scampered across the landing pad to her mother. The Lara lowered her massive head, and the two touched snouts in what was clearly a gesture of affection. A wave of emotion, love, relief, joy, washed over everyone present, so powerful that several of the security officers wiped tears from their eyes. After a moment, the Lara raised her head again. I would know how my daughter came to be in your care, and how she came to be injured. Bennett explained the situation as diplomatically as possible, how the hatchling had somehow become separated from any adult Drakari, how the Concordat soldiers had surrounded and threatened her, and how Miles had intervened. And where are these soldiers now? The Lara asked, her mental voice taking on an edge that made everyone flinch. They've been confined to their barracks pending an investigation, Bennett replied. The Concordat has been informed of the incident. The Concordat. Thalara's contempt was palpable. They have long viewed my kind as a threat to their dominion. This is not the first time they have acted against us, though it is the first time they have dared to harm one of our young. Miles felt a chill at her words. The stories he'd heard about the Drakari included their capacity for holding grudges across generations. A slight against them was never forgotten and rarely forgiven. The actions of these soldiers do not represent the position of Colony 7, Bennett said carefully, or of humanity. As you can see, it was a human who intervened to protect your daughter. Thalara's gaze returned to Miles. Yes, the small one. Come forward, child. Emily gripped Miles's shoulder tightly, but he gently removed her hand and stepped forward. Tell me your name, the Lara commanded. Miles Harper, he replied, his voice steadier than he'd expected. Miles Harper, the Lara repeated, as if testing the sound of it in her mind. Why did you place yourself between my daughter and those who would harm her? You could not have known she was of my brood. You could not have known I would come. Miles considered the question seriously. I didn't know who she was. I just knew she was scared and hurt, and they were going to kill her. It wasn't right. Not right, the Lara echoed. A simple concept, yet one that escapes many beings far older and supposedly wiser than you. Her massive head lowered until her eyes were level with Miles's. My daughter tells me you heard her call for help, that you understood her thoughts. Miles nodded. Yes, I heard her in my head. Remarkable, the Lara murmured. In all our history, there are only 3 recorded instances of non-Drakari who could hear our thought speech. None were human. An uncomfortable silence followed this revelation, broken only when the hatchling scampered from her mother's side to Miles. The small creature circled him once, then reared up on her hind legs, placing her front claws gently on his chest. A flood of images and emotions poured into his mind: gratitude, affection, and something else, something that felt like a promise. "She has marked you," Delara explained, her mental voice now tinged with something like awe. "She has given you her name." "Her name?" Miles repeated, still caught in the web of the hatchling's thoughts. "Among our kind, names are not given lightly. They are sacred things, carrying power and meaning." Thalara's wings shifted slightly. "She calls herself Lumina, light and darkness. And she has bound herself to you." Captain Bennett cleared her throat. "Bound? What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Delara replied, "that your young Miles Harper has inadvertently created a connection that has not existed between our species in all of history. A soul bond with a Drakari is a rare gift and a heavy responsibility." Miles's parents stepped forward, Emily's face a mask of concern. "What are you saying? What does this mean for our son?" Delara regarded them thoughtfully. "It means, Nest Guardians of Miles Harper, that your son and my daughter are now linked in ways even I do not fully understand. Such bonds were common among our own kind in ancient times, but never with humans." "Is it dangerous?" Nathan asked bluntly. "All growth contains an element of danger," Delara replied. "But no, the bond itself will not harm your son. It may, in fact, grant him certain advantages." Dr. Walker, who had been taking notes furiously on his datapad, looked up. "What kind of advantages?" "That remains to be seen," Delara said. "Each bond manifests differently, but typically a strengthening of the telepathic connection. Perhaps more." Miles hardly heard them. He was lost in communication with Lumina, whose thoughts were becoming clearer, more structured. It wasn't just emotions now, but concepts, memories, glimpses of a world with twin suns and vast mountain ranges where creatures like Delara soared through violet skies. "I can see her home," Miles whispered. "It's beautiful." Thalara's attention snapped back to Miles. "You see through her memories already?" The bond strengthens quickly. She seemed to come to a decision. "Captain Bennett, I must speak with you and the Nest Guardians privately. There are matters to discuss concerning the future." Bennett nodded. "Of course. We can use the conference room in the main building." "Very well." Delara turned to one of the security officers. "You, fetch those who harm my daughter. Bring them here." The officer looked to Bennett, who hesitated before nodding. "Do it. But make it clear this is a diplomatic meeting, not a tribunal." As the officer hurried away, Delara lowered her massive body until she was resting on her haunches. The hatchling, Lumina, returned to her mother's side, but kept her gaze fixed on Miles. "There will be consequences for what has happened here today," Delara said, her mental voice reaching everyone present. "For the Concordat, for your colony, for my daughter, and for you, Miles Harper. The wheels of fate have been set in motion, and none can say where they will lead us." Miles felt a shiver run down his spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. Through his connection with Lumina, he sensed that something momentous was beginning, something that would change not just his life, but the relationship between humans and Drakari forever. And it had all started because he couldn't stand by and watch as someone smaller and weaker was being hurt. As the adults moved toward the conference building, Miles remained where he was, locked in silent communion with the creature who had, in the space of a few hours, become irrevocably linked to his destiny. Whatever came next, he knew with absolute certainty that he had done the right thing. Sometimes, that was all that mattered. The conference room fell silent as Delara ducked through the doorway, her massive form making the space designed for humans seem suddenly small. Captain Bennett sat at the head of the table, with Miles and his parents on one side and Dr. Walker on the other. Lumina had insisted on staying with Miles, curling herself around his shoulders like an iridescent scarf, occasionally sending him flashes of thought and memory. Before the Concordat representatives arrive, Delara began without preamble. "There are things you must understand about my daughter's presence here." She settled onto her haunches, her wings folding tightly against her back. Lumina was not lost or abandoned. She was sent, as part of her Xitha, her coming-of-age journey. Emily Harper leaned forward. You sent your child alone to a human colony? Knowing the dangers. All worthwhile growth involves risk, the Lara replied. For countless generations, our young have undertaken solitary journeys to test their resilience and wisdom. In ancient times, these journeys were confined to our homeworld. But as the galaxy has grown smaller, so too have our horizons expanded. So this was some kind of test? Nathan asked, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. One that nearly got her killed? Thalera's multifaceted eyes fixed on him. Your concern honors you, Nest Guardian. But understand, we did not anticipate the Concordat's presence or their hostility. Lumina was to observe your colony secretly, learn about your kind, and return with knowledge. Her ship was damaged during an ion storm, forcing her to land. The injury to her wing came later, when she was discovered by the soldiers. And now? Bennett asked. What happens now that she's been discovered, and she's formed this bond with Miles? The Lara was silent for a moment, communicating privately with her daughter. Finally, she addressed them again. The bond complicates matters. It cannot be severed without harm to both Lumina and Miles. Yet it also presents an opportunity unprecedented in our history. What kind of opportunity? Miles asked, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the room. An exchange, the Lara said, of knowledge, of understanding, perhaps, in time, of friendship between our peoples. Dr. Walker looked up from his datapad, his eyes wide with excitement. Are you suggesting formal diplomatic relations between humans and Drakari? That would be extraordinary. I suggest nothing so grandiose, the Lara cautioned. The Conclave would not approve such a step. Not yet, but they have authorized me to propose a more personal arrangement. Before she could elaborate, the door opened, and a group of Concordat officials entered, led by a tall, imposing figure in an ornate blue-silver uniform. Unlike the soldiers from the plaza, this was a human, Commander Tyler Grant, the Concordat's representative on Colony 7. Captain Bennett, he said stiffly, I was informed there was an incident involving my men and a diplomatic situation. His eyes widened slightly when they fell on the Lara, but he recovered quickly. Brood Mother. The Concordat extends its apologies for any misunderstanding that may have occurred. Misunderstanding. Thalera's mental voice took on a dangerous edge. Your soldiers attempted to murder my daughter. There is no misunderstanding about that. Grant's face hardened. If your offspring was indeed threatened, I assure you those responsible will face disciplinary action. However, the presence of an unregistered Drakari on a Concordat-protected colony raises questions of its own. Questions that can wait, Bennett interjected. Commander, I've asked you here because the Drakari have requested a formal apology and reparations. Reparations? Grant's eyebrows shot up. That's hardly necessary for what was clearly an unfortunate incident involving a juvenile of their species. Miles felt Lumina tense around his shoulders, a wave of indignation flowing from her mind to his. Without thinking, he spoke up. They were going to kill her. I saw them. They were laughing about it. Grant's cold gaze shifted to Miles. And you are? Miles Harper, Bennett supplied. The boy who intervened. His actions likely prevented an interstellar incident of much greater proportions. I see. Grant's tone made it clear he saw a troublesome child, nothing more. Nevertheless, the Concordat's protocols regarding unregistered alien life forms are clear. Your protocols do not apply to the Drakari. The Lara interrupted, rising to her full height. The room seemed to darken around her, her scales emitting a subtle glow. We were navigating the stars when your ancestors were learning to make fire. We do not register. We do not ask permission. And we do not forget those who harm our young. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Grant, to his credit, didn't flinch, though the officials behind him took several steps back. What are your demands? He asked flatly. Justice, the Lara replied. The 6 who harm my daughter will face consequences. What kind of consequences? Grant's hand moved subtly toward the sidearm at his hip. Not death, if that is your concern, the Lara said, noting the movement. Though it would be within my rights to demand it. Instead, they will be marked. Marked? Bennett asked, glancing between them. A telepathic imprint, Delara explained, so that any Drakari they encounter in the future will know of their actions. It will not harm them physically, but they will carry the shame of their deeds for all their days. Grant's jaw tightened. And if I refuse? Then I will return to the Conclave with news that the Concordat encourages the murder of Drakari young, Delara said simply. The consequences of that report would reach far beyond Colony 7. The implied threat hung in the air. Everyone present knew the stories of what had happened to civilizations that had earned the Drakari's collective wrath. Entire star systems rendered uninhabitable. Species reduced to scattered refugees. The Drakari were few in number, but possessed technology and abilities that bordered on the mythical. After a long moment, Grant nodded curtly. The soldiers will submit to this, marking, under protest and without admission of wrongdoing. The truth of their actions will speak for itself, Delara replied. There is another matter, however, one concerning Miles Harper and my daughter. All eyes turned to Miles, who felt a sudden wave of nervousness. Lumina sent him a feeling of reassurance, her small head rubbing against his cheek. As I was explaining before the commander's arrival, Delara continued, the bond between Lumina and Miles presents both challenges and opportunities. Traditionally, when such bonds formed between Drakari and other species, a rare occurrence, the bonded pair would remain together, learning from one another. Emily's hand found Miles's. You want to take our son? No, Delara assured her. Lumina is too young to leave our home system permanently, and Miles too young to leave his family. Instead, I propose an arrangement. Miles would visit our homeworld during your standard educational breaks, what you call summer vacation and other holidays. Lumina would visit Earth and Colony 7 when her studies permit. As they grow, they would serve as bridges between our peoples. Absolutely not, Grant cut in. The Concordat has strict regulations about human-alien cultural exchanges, especially involving minors. This colony falls under our protection and our laws. This colony, Bennett reminded him, falls under joint jurisdiction. And this decision ultimately rests with Miles's parents. She turned to Nathan and Emily. This is unprecedented, I know. But it could also be an incredible opportunity for Miles, and potentially for humanity as a whole. Nathan and Emily exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that parents sometimes do. What would these visits involve? Nathan finally asked. What would Miles be doing on your world? Learning, Delara replied. About our culture, our history, our sciences. In return, Lumina would learn about yours. They would grow together, their bond strengthening both of them. And the dangers? Emily pressed. You said yourself that the bond carries responsibilities. There are always risks in growth, Delara acknowledged. The telepathic connection will deepen. Miles may develop abilities uncommon among humans. But we would guide him, teach him to control these gifts. Miles, who had been listening intently, finally spoke up. I want to do it. When his parents looked at him in surprise, he continued, I can already feel what she feels. See what she sees sometimes. And it's amazing. Dr. Walker leaned forward eagerly. The scientific value alone would be extraordinary. We know so little about the Drakari. This could be the beginning of a true exchange of knowledge. And a diplomatic nightmare, Grant muttered. The Concordat Council will never approve. The Concordat, Delara said, fixing him with her ancient gaze, need not be involved. This arrangement would be between the Drakari Conclave and the Harper family, with Colony 7 serving merely as a point of contact. Unless, Commander, you wish to explain to your superiors why you provoked the first Drakari-human conflict in recorded history. Grant's face reddened, but he said nothing more. Bennett turned to the Harpers. This decision must be yours. Take some time to think about it. Discuss it privately. I don't need time, Miles said firmly. I already know. Nathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Son, this is a big decision. One that could change your life. It already has, Miles replied, reaching up to stroke Lumina's scales. From the moment I heard her calling for help, everything changed. I can't explain it, but I know this is right. Emily looked at her son, tears glistening in her eyes. You've always had good instincts about people, even when you were tiny. She took a deep breath and turned to the Lara. If this is what Miles wants, and if you can guarantee his safety during these visits, then we won't stand in the way. Nathan nodded slowly. But we have conditions. We want regular communication, the ability to visit him while he's on your world. And if at any point Miles wants to end this arrangement, it ends. No questions, no consequences. These terms are acceptable, the Lara agreed. The Conclave will prepare formal documentation outlining the details. Commander Grant pushed back from the table. This meeting is clearly proceeding without regard for Concordat protocols. I will be filing a formal protest with the Council. File whatever you like, Commander, Bennett replied coolly. But I suggest you focus on preparing your soldiers for their marking. Unless you'd prefer to explain to your superiors why the Drakari have withdrawn from the non-interference pact that's kept peace in this sector for 3 centuries. Grant's mouth thinned to a hard line, but he said nothing more as he stalked from the room, his aides hurrying after him. He's going to be trouble, Nathan observed after the door closed. The Concordat has always feared what they cannot control, the Lara said. But they fear the Drakari more than they fear change. They will adapt. Her massive head turned toward Miles. As we all must. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations and explanations. The 6 Concordat soldiers were brought before the Lara, their earlier bravado replaced by naked fear as she performed the marking ritual. It was anticlimactic to watch. She simply placed one massive claw against each of their foreheads, a brief glow emanating from the point of contact. But Miles, through his connection with Lumina, felt the power of what was happening, a psychic signature being etched into their minds, one that would brand them to any Drakari they ever encountered. Justice, but not vengeance. Consequences, but not destruction. It was, Miles realized, a measured response that spoke volumes about the Drakari's true nature. By evening, preliminary agreements had been drafted. Miles would visit the Drakari homeworld during Earth's summer months, with shorter visits during other school breaks. Lumina would spend equivalent periods on Colony 7 and, eventually, Earth. A secure communication link would be established between the Harper family and Thalera's brood, allowing regular contact even when the bonded pair were separated. As the adults finalized the details, Miles and Lumina escaped to a quiet corner of the Colonial Authority building's garden. The artificial sunlight was dimming, simulating Earth's sunset, casting long shadows across the transplanted flowers and shrubs. Can you understand me better now? Miles asked aloud, though he was beginning to realize he could communicate with Lumina just by thinking. The hatchling, now curled comfortably in his lap, sent a clear affirmative. Her telepathic voice was becoming more distinct, more articulate. Your language is complex, she communicated. But the bond helps. I learn quickly. What's your world like? Miles asked, both through words and thoughts. I've seen glimpses, but... In response, Lumina shared a flood of images. Vast mountain ranges with peaks that pierced the clouds. Deep valleys filled with phosphorescent plants. Enormous structures that seemed to grow from the living rock. And above it all, countless Drakari soaring through skies painted with the light of twin suns. Beautiful, Miles breathed. And you really want me to see it? Yes. Lumina's mental voice held excitement and pride. No human has walked our world in living memory. You will be the first in ages. Why me? The question that had been nagging at Miles all day finally surfaced. Of all the humans you could have bonded with, Lumina considered this, her thoughts rippling with complexity beyond her young age. A reminder that even a Drakari hatchling possessed intelligence and wisdom beyond most human children. The bond chooses, she finally replied. Not you. Not me. Something deeper. Something that saw in you what my people once valued above all else. Compassion for the vulnerable, courage in the face of injustice, willingness to stand alone against many. Miles felt his cheeks warm at the praise. I just did what anyone would do. Lumina's mental laughter sparkled in his mind. No. Many passed by. Many saw. Only you acted. That is rare, Miles Harper. Rarer than you know. Before Miles could respond, Captain Bennett approached, accompanied by the Lara. Everything's arranged, Bennett informed them. Miles, you'll have 3 weeks to prepare before your first visit to the Drakari homeworld. Your parents are gathering the necessary supplies now. 3 weeks. Miles looked up in surprise. So soon. The summer solstice approaches on our world, the Lara explained. It is a time of significance for our young. Lumina's Xitha cannot be considered complete until she returns home to share what she has learned, and to introduce her bonded companion. Will there be others like me there? Miles asked. Other non-Drakari with bonds? No, the Lara admitted. There are none living. The last such bond was formed over 300 of your years ago, with a species now extinct. You will be the first human to experience our world as more than a visitor. You will see it through Drakari eyes, feel it through Drakari senses. The enormity of what was happening finally began to sink in. Miles would be a pioneer, a bridge between species that had kept each other at arm's length for millennia. It was exciting and terrifying in equal measure. There is one more matter to address, the Lara continued. The marking your parents requested. Marking? Miles looked confused. Like what you did to the soldiers? No, Bennett clarified. Your parents asked for some way to monitor your well-being while you're on the Drakari homeworld. The Lara suggested a different kind of marking, one that would allow them to sense your emotional state across the distance. The Lara lowered her massive head until her eyes were level with Miles's. It would be a small connection, nothing like what you share with Lumina, but it would give your parents peace of mind. The choice is yours. Miles didn't hesitate. Yes. If it helps them worry less, yes. Very well. The Lara extended one massive claw, its tip glowing softly. This will not hurt. She touched Miles's forehead gently, and he felt a warm sensation spreading through him, like sunlight flowing through his veins. For a brief moment, he sensed his parents, their love, their worry, their pride, as if they stood beside him. It is done, the Lara said, withdrawing her claw. They will feel your strongest emotions, know when you are safe or in danger. Distance will not matter. Thank you, Miles said, understanding the gift he'd been given. For everything. Thalara's mental voice softened. It is we who should thank you, Miles Harper. You have given my daughter life, and perhaps given our peoples a new beginning. The 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations, studies, and goodbyes. Miles devoured every scrap of information about the Drakari that Dr. Walker could provide, though much of it was speculation rather than fact. The reclusive species had shared little of their culture or technology with the wider galaxy, preferring isolation to integration. Lumina remained with Miles throughout, their bond strengthening daily. By the end of the first week, they could communicate as easily as if speaking aloud. By the end of the second, Miles began experiencing flashes of Lumina's other senses, the ability to perceive thermal patterns, to detect magnetic fields, to see wavelengths of light invisible to human eyes. It was disorienting at first, but gradually, he learned to integrate these new perceptions with his human senses. Commander Grant made good on his threat to file protests with the Concordat Council, but as the Lara had predicted, the Council was unwilling to risk provoking the Drakari. Their official response designated the arrangement as an educational and cultural exchange program, placing it outside standard Concordat regulations. On the day of departure, the entire colony seemed to gather at the landing pad. Miles's parents hugged him tightly, their eyes bright with unshed tears. Remember everything we talked about, Emily said, straightening his jacket for the 10th time. Keep your emergency beacon with you at all times. Use the communication link every day. And if anything feels wrong, you tell the Lara immediately. I will, Mom, Miles promised. But I'll be fine. Lumina will be with me the whole time. Nathan knelt to Miles's level. Son, you're about to see and do things no human has ever experienced. Keep your eyes open, learn everything you can, but never forget where you come from. I won't, Dad, Miles assured him. And I'll be back before you know it. 2 months, Emily said, trying to smile through her worry. It's not so long. Captain Bennett approached, offering Miles a small device. This is a direct link to my personal communicator. If there's ever an emergency, or if you just need to talk to someone who isn't your parents, use it. Thanks, Captain, Miles said, tucking the device into his pocket. Dr. Walker was next, practically bouncing with excitement. I've uploaded every question I could think of to your datapad. If you could get answers to even a fraction of them. I'll try, Miles laughed. But I'm going as a guest, not a spy. Of course, Walker agreed hastily. Just observe everything. This is history in the making. Finally, it was time. Thalera's shuttle waited, its organic hull shimmering in the artificial sunlight. Lumina, who had grown noticeably in the past 3 weeks, nudged Miles gently. Ready? Her thoughts asked. Miles took one last look at Colony 7, at his parents, at the people who had become friends, at the only home he'd known since leaving Earth. Then he nodded. Ready. They boarded the shuttle together, Lumina leading the way into a space that was unlike any spacecraft Miles had ever seen. There were no hard edges, no control panels or screens. Everything seemed alive, responsive to thought rather than touch. The Lara settled into what might have been a pilot's position, though Miles couldn't see any obvious controls. Secure yourself, Miles Harper. The journey will be swift. Miles found a spot that seemed designed for a being his size, and watched in fascination as the living material of the shuttle formed a supportive cradle around him. Lumina curled up beside him, her warm presence reassuring. As the shuttle rose silently from the landing pad, Miles felt a swell of emotions. Fear and excitement, sadness at leaving and anticipation for what lay ahead. Through the bond, he sensed Lumina's joy at returning home mingled with her curiosity about how he would perceive her world. Will they accept me? He asked her privately. Your people. They will, Lumina assured him. The bond is sacred to us, and you have earned their respect through your actions. I just did what was right, Miles said, a phrase he'd repeated often over the past weeks. And that, Thalera's voice joined their mental conversation, is precisely why you are worthy of this honor. Among the Drakari, there is no higher virtue than standing for what is right, even when standing alone. The shuttle accelerated, Colony 7 dwindling to a speck below them. Miles watched through a viewport as the artificial environment dome that protected the colony from the harsh atmosphere of the planet receded, replaced by the vast emptiness of space. He should have been terrified. He was 11 years old, leaving his parents for the first time, heading to an alien world with creatures most humans only knew through stories and rumors. Yet somehow he felt at peace. The bond with Lumina anchored him, giving him confidence that transcended his years. How long until we reach your world? He asked aloud. Time flows differently when traveling between the stars, the Lara replied cryptically. Rest now. When you wake, we will be approaching Drakkar. Miles felt a gentle mental suggestion of sleep washing over him. He didn't fight it, instead letting his eyes close as the stars streaked past the viewport. His last conscious thought was of the incredible journey ahead, not just the physical distance being crossed, but the greater journey of understanding between two species that had been strangers for too long. He had no way of knowing that his simple act of compassion, stepping between laughing soldiers and a crying hatchling, would one day be recorded in the histories of both humans and Drakari as the moment that changed everything. That future generations would study the friendship between Miles Harper and Lumina of the Kashtari Highlands as the foundation of an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. All he knew was that he had done what was right, and sometimes that was all that mattered. When Miles opened his eyes again, it was to a view that took his breath away. Through the viewport, he saw a massive planet, its surface a swirl of deep purples, blues, and greens unlike anything on Earth or Colony 7. And orbiting this world were structures that defied description, enormous crystalline formations that seemed to grow from space itself, connected by bridges of pure energy. Drakkar, Lumina's thoughts whispered in his mind. Home. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Miles pressed his face to the viewport, drinking in every detail. Vast mountain ranges rose from violet oceans, their peaks wreathed in clouds that shimmered with electrical energy. Forests of impossibly tall trees spread across continents, their canopies glowing with bioluminescence even in daylight. And soaring through the skies were hundreds, no, thousands, of Drakari, their scales catching the light of the twin suns and transforming it into rainbows of color. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Miles breathed. Thalera's mental voice held pride and affection. "This is but one small part of our world, Miles Harper. There is much more to discover." The shuttle approached a mountain larger than any Miles had ever imagined, its peak disappearing into the clouds. As they drew closer, he realized the mountain itself was partially hollow, with vast openings leading to what appeared to be a city built within the living rock. "The Kashtari Eyrie," Valara explained. "Home to my brood and 7 others. The oldest continuous settlement on Drakkar." The shuttle passed through one of the enormous openings, entering a space so vast that Miles's mind struggled to comprehend it. The interior of the mountain had been transformed into a living city, with terraces, pools, gardens, and dwellings all integrated into the natural formation. Drakari of all sizes moved throughout the space, some flying between levels, others walking along wide pathways. And they were all, Miles realized with a start, watching the shuttle. "They know I'm coming?" he asked, a flutter of nervousness returning. "Yes," Valara confirmed. "Your arrival has been anticipated. You are the first human to be welcomed to our world as a bonded companion." The shuttle settled onto a wide terrace near the top of the internal space. As the hull dissolved to create an exit, Miles took a deep breath. "Remember," Lumina's thoughts encouraged him, "you belong here now, because of our bond. Walk proud." Miles nodded and stepped out of the shuttle onto the soil of an alien world. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making him feel buoyant. The air was richer in oxygen, filling his lungs with energy. And the colors. Everywhere he looked, the world seemed more vibrant, more alive than anything he had experienced before. A semicircle of Drakari waited on the terrace, most similar in size to the Lara, though varying in coloration. Their scales ranged from deep emerald to burnished gold, from midnight black to silvery white. All watched him with those multifaceted eyes that seemed to see through to his soul. The Lara emerged behind him, with Lumina scampering to his side. His small friend had grown noticeably in the weeks since their meeting, now reaching halfway up his thigh when standing on her hind legs. "Elders of the Kashtari Eyrie," Thalera's mental voice projected to all present. "I present Miles Harper of Earth, bonded companion to my daughter Lumina, who saved her life at risk of his own." A ripple of mental communication passed through the assembled Drakari, too complex and rapid for Miles to follow, even with his enhanced perception through the bond. Finally, one of the Drakari, whose scales shimmered with an almost metallic gold, stepped forward. "Miles Harper of Earth, I am Valaros, elder speaker of the Kashtari Eyrie. Your actions have earned you a place among us that no human has held before. Are you prepared to learn our ways, to see through our eyes, to understand with our hearts?" Miles felt Lumina's encouragement through their bond. He stood straight, meeting the elder's gaze directly. "I am, elder speaker. I'm honored by your welcome." Valaros's massive head inclined slightly. "The honor is shared, young one. Your courage speaks well of your species." His mental voice took on a more formal tone. "By the ancient traditions of the Drakari, by the sacred bond formed between kindred spirits, we accept you as Lyrash Sa, friend of the brood." As he spoke these words, Miles felt something shift in the air around him. The other Drakari lowered their heads in what he somehow knew was a gesture of respect and acceptance. Through his bond with Lumina, he sensed the significance of the moment. He had been formally recognized, not as a visitor or guest, but as one connected to the Drakari community itself. "Come," Valaros continued. "A dwelling has been prepared for you. Rest, and then the learning will begin." As Miles followed Lumina and the Lara deeper into the Eyrie, passing wonders that no human had ever witnessed, he felt a profound sense of rightness. The journey ahead would be challenging. Bridging the gap between two vastly different species always would be. But it was a journey worth taking. And it had all begun because a boy couldn't stand by while others laughed at suffering. Because compassion, that most human of qualities, had turned out to be the one thing the galaxy needed most. Some would later call Miles Harper a hero, an ambassador, even a legend. But in his own mind, he remained simply a boy who had done what was right when it mattered. And sometimes, that was all it took to change the universe. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.